What's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a lovely day. For those tuning in for the first time, welcome to the Pals Podcast. Happy to have you here, and for those returning, we appreciate the support. My name is George Boutsalis, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Pals Podcast, and I am your only co-host on this intro today because we had a little mix-up, and I got to record this intro by myself. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Today's guest is Elias Theodorou, a good Greek-Canadian boy and a mixed martial artist, but not only a mixed martial artist, the first sanctioned medical cannabis athlete in sport. He is paving the way for cannabis use within sport, and he explains why he uses it and how it helps him and benefits him through his mixed martial arts career. He took us through his entire career and what he's got on the horizon. He's got a fight coming up. And he's also doing some other stuff with in the film industry, among some other projects. It was a really fun conversation, guys. He shed some light on some of the misconceptions and the stigmas surrounding cannabis with sports. I think this will cater to cater to everybody. It was a fantastic conversation and really educational. I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Cottage Springs. For those who don't know, Cottage Springs has to be one of the best vodka waters and vodka sodas you can buy on the market right now. Rick and I and our friends drink them all summer long when we're at the cottage, when we're having a little pre-drink get-together, dinner parties, what have you. An amazing drink. They're gluten-free, sugar-free, no carbs, 100 calories, and 100% Canadian. They come in vodka sodas and vodka waters. You can buy them in the LCBO. They come in mixed packs. Some of the flavors include raspberry, lime, and strawberry kiwi for the waters. My personal favorites are the sodas, and they come in watermelon, peach, lemon, lime, and wild cherry. Guys, they're amazing. I mean, it's easy to grab and go. Pick up an 8-pack at the LCBO and get on your way. Start your weekend off right. I would also like to give a big shout out to our other sponsor, Cast. Cast intends to be the objective assembly of public opinion, and it's going to shake up the social media landscape. They're intending to let people share their opinions and their insights, ask any question they want, and let people vote anonymously without the fear of reprisal or ramifications. They think that the social media industry is due for some objectivity and impartiality to bring back to it and let people just communicate freely in a safe space. So for those who want to find out more, go to www.createyourcast.com. The beta is launching this week. So if you want to get early access to the beta, sign up now, www.createyourcast.com or at createyourcast on social. And I guess this is just me. LFG, guys, let's go.
That's how I know I need to lose weight. My clothes don't fit anymore.
Okay. I'm good. We're
You
good.
good? Are you good?
We're good.
We all good?
Pull the mic a little bit closer, about a fist away. Yeah, we're good.
Oh, I like that, Georgie.
I heard that. I'm not going to take that. I heard that from Joe Rogan. It's supposed to be a fist from the mouth. Okay, let's go.
Oh,
We're live.
welcome.
Boom.
We're going to start this off, and I want to ask, and me and Georgie were even chatting about this earlier. When did you decide that you wanted to be a professional fighter? Like, I was reading up, and it says you went to school. I think you were going to go to George Brown or something for arts or marketing or something.
I have a degree in advertising from Guelph University.
Guelph, there we go.
Okay.
So when did you decide, I'm not going to go into that, I'm just going to beat people up for a living?
Yeah, well, it actually goes. It's a couple layers in that. What's it called? I think the concept of notoriety was very integral in regards to my fighting career. So I never really got into fights. I was a skater, right? And then one day, some guy that I know, I used to play baseball back in the day too. So I got a wicked right hand. So this guy was throwing.
Oh, we know.
So this guy was he was basically throwing some snowballs, and then I got a lot the better of him. I hit him a lot. And he got mad about it, and he kind of like ran at me and like tackled me. And we kind of knew each other through some of my classes, so I didn't really think of it. And he tackled me, and then the girl I was walking with at the time, she kind of like tried to stop it, and he smacked her. And I got heated, and I threw him and whatever. He walked away with his tails between his legs. That was like on a Friday. The Monday comes, and his cousin is like one of the big guys in school, and he's demanding me to fight him, and basically all of like half of the school kind of watches.
Sorry, how old were you at this point?
I was this was probably grade 10, so I was like 14
16,
15 somewhere around there. So I didn't want to fight because the incident happened there. He was in the wrong. I kind of smacked him. He didn't want to do anything, and then now he basically came with his cousin and all their friends and squad and kind of confronted me. So as I started walking away, his cousin grabs me, sucker punches me, and throws me into his cousin. And the guy that wanted to fight me, and a light switch just went on, and like a hockey fight, I jerseyed him and just beat the living crap out of him, right? And eventually got broken up, but I vividly remember him walking, like swaying away. He was just bamboozled. It looked like a cartoon where there's like butterflies or whatever like coming off his head. And the fight got broken up. Like some of my friends, older brothers, they kind of stepped in. The teachers kind of stopped. It didn't think any of it. That was again on a Monday, but like Wednesday, it turns out it went viral. Viral in the earliest sense because it was on some kid filmed it with a Motorola.
Yeah,
a
razor.
A razor, like a razor. You know what I mean? And I got a little bit of what's called some street cred for it. So I thought I was the coolest kid. And at that point, my like whole new persona was I didn't start fights, but I finished them. And then I was undefeated in high school, and I thought I was king shit and for that aspect. And then I had a very humbling moment and a real viral moment. So I was at a local watering hole after my first year of university. And again, I was undefeated in high school at this point.
Having a belt, reigning champ.
Exactly. Legend in my own mind. And I pick a fight with someone I shouldn't. In the fact that I was bum stumbling and he was completely sober. And then first thing I tried to do when we ended up taking it outside was an ill-fated Superman punch, and I slip, fall, land on the ground, kicks me in the face. Again, being
laugh.
Yeah, kicks me in the face. No, laugh. It's hilarious. Kicks me in the face. And I'm an idiot at this point in my life. Rip off my shirt, chase him, jump on a cab, and because he got away. The cab driver drives off. I slip, fall, boom. I landed, fell asleep, wake up the next day, kind of next day. I'm telling my friends, because I worked at Foot Locker at the time, this very funny story, and because it was funny at the time. And then a friend that wasn't there for the whole debacle or fun thereof, whatever, I'm basically comes in and he goes, Elias, are you all right? I'm like, yeah, why? What's up? He goes, it's on YouTube. I'm like, what's YouTube? And then this is like 2008. Basically, a clip of it went viral on whatever the heck it was. It was like a world star of sorts, and I was mortified, just completely mortified. And it's called The Legend in My Own Mind, etc., etc. Pop goes the ego. And I basically confided in my dad and said, hey, what do I do? And he goes, well, you love that UFC stuff so much. Why don't you go and make sure this never happens again? And I did. And I just showed up at a gym. And originally I was going to learn some things and find this guy and do something to that component. And I'll show him. But then I obviously, allowed me to mellow out, find a purpose and some structure. And the rest is history.
Wow. That's actually kind of where you ended there was what I wanted to ask. Do you think that through your training, it made you realize that, like you said, it mellowed you out, but did it make you realize that it's more like the self-defense aspect and just how to kind of be more strategic when it comes to battle? Like, what did it really teach you when you say mellow out?
Well, there's a lot of things. I think I don't have the ego I once had. I think a little bit more in regards to the structure, the capacity of knowing that you can defend yourself is a very powerful thing. And again, I've competed with some of the best in the world. I've also now at this point and leading up to it, even before professional, I trained with some of the best in the world. And again, those humbling moments of losing every single day in the gym, it's much more worthwhile than trying to settle some dumb bar, argument, right? Like especially when I became professional, I would just buy people drinks. Like I'd much rather have a good time with someone than try to best them in something that doesn't really matter. And that's the part of I guess the evolving as an athlete, beyond just some high school kid who got involved in fights.
Yeah. And I guess too, the other thing, as you train and you actually learn, like fighting is a very humbling thing, right? Like you step in there with anybody that could be half your size and he could still go toe to toe with you. But you said you lose your ego, but then also on the flip side, doesn't it also play a little bit, help your ego a little bit to know, like you walk into a bar, you say rather buy drinks, but you know in your head that if somebody messes with you, it's not going to be a one-way fight. Like, you're going to be the guy who actually, in fact, finishes the fight.
Oh, yeah.
So it kind of, even though you're more calm and mellow and your ego's kind of put to the side, still kind of the ego internally knows that you could finish the fight, if you will.
For sure. And obviously those are just, it's just reality for the most part with like 90% of the people out there, just because of how much time I've put into it. Sure. But I don't know. It's allowed me to, again, the structure, the purpose, and in the times where I've even been in confrontations, it coincidentally always happens with like right after wrestling class, and I just like pick them up and slam them just to let's just stop.
You're imagining that guy from the bar, aren't you?
Pardon?
When you pick them up and slam, you're imagining that guy from the bar.
No. I'd actually buy that guy. I'd buy that guy dinner. It really changed.
Thanks, man. You changed my life.
Right? So, humbled in the capacity of every day I lose, at the gym and come back. And, you mentioned, even people smaller than you. And that's kind of what happened. My brother, his friend, and they're a couple of years younger than me, he was doing martial arts for his whole life at that point. So I just showed up at his gym, and I was like 19 at that point, and he's 16 and just strangling me, like putting me out, like strangling, throwing me around, like just like literally choking me out. But I would show up every single day, and then it was that beautiful little thing of it kind of like translates to anything in regards to people learning something. But where you were the first day, then 6 months later, then a year, then now. Give or take 10 plus years training and competing. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, you said something that your dad was the one that kind of said, why don't you go and do this? So your parents were supportive the whole time?
Yeah, supportive. They didn't understand it, especially because you mentioned with what's called schooling. After I finished my degree and I got the diploma, they were so pumped, whatever. Like I had a couple of offers for different ad agencies, et cetera. And like, so what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to Thailand. I'm going to go train and I'm going to have a fight. And I'm like, okay. And then, they're very, I couldn't be more thankful and undeserving of how amazing they are. So they've been pretty much what's called supportive all the way through. Although my mom does start every fight like this and ends it like this.
Both your parents Greek?
Yeah.
Well, they're probably more comfortable knowing that you're a good fighter. Like if you were losing all those schoolyard fights, they probably wouldn't have been, maybe go take that job at that desk in that ad agency.
Yeah.
You said also on that point, your dad kind of said, you're interested in that UFC thing. Why don't you pursue it? What interested you more in MMA, like the UFC type path, than let's say traditional boxing? Was there something that drew you more to that?
Well, I think in regards to just the whole completeness of it, again, if you throw in even the Greek component of it, if you go back to pancration and the history of it being attached to the ancient Olympics, like I was drawn to it a lot more than necessarily boxing, because of the simple fact that there's so much more than just punches, and there's so much more than just the head and body.
Yeah. It is a classical sport. That's like it came up in the
sweet science, because again, you're only hitting you only have two weapons, and you're only hitting really two areas, the body and the head. Whereas MMA, it's an actual fight.
Yeah, it's everything. What would you say your specialty is? Like, do you excel in one area more than...
Well, I think as in many professions, there's generalists and specialists. I think someone that comes from a more traditional, whether it's boxing, wrestling, karate, or anything in between, that's kind of their discipline, and they build everything up. Whereas I'm more of a generalist, and it really depends on whom I'm fighting. I'd kind of come into that aspect of people that trained mixed martial arts completely with the concept or the plan in mind to eventually put it all together, rather than I did this thing and now I'm incorporating it around everything else.
So do you say a lot of it's focused on who you're going to fight, and that's where you'll guess work towards that fight and what their weaknesses are?
A little bit. I am who I am, and cardio is kind of my thing. I try to outpace people, whether it's kicks, whether it's grinding, whether it's hybrid of them both. And again, it kind of is more contemporary to whom I'm competing against. If they're a really great striker, I'm going to put them on their back and make them feel like a fish out of water. If they're a really good jits guy, I'm probably just going to push them against the cage and out wrestle them and throw them around, or strike them and kind of just not let them get what they want.
Well, I was reading somewhere over the weekend. I saw that when you kick someone, they went to block and you broke their arm.
I've broken a couple arms like that. Yeah.
I've never broken a bone in my body, nor have I ever broken anybody's bones ever. Yeah. Knock on wood. But what was that like?
It's very interesting. It's very vivid in my head. I remember it because a lot of it has to do with body language as well in a fight. So when I kicked him, I already had that kind of the range. He was very long, right? So he was kind of blocking wrong, and because he was a southpaw, basically a southpaw, when you win the when your opponent's a southpaw and you're winning what's called the foot battle, and you're on the outside, everything on your right, which is my power hand or my power shots, kind of land harder just because in regards to where we're kind of facing each other. So I hit his arm and I could see it, like his body language, and I just, like a shark in the water, and it could sense the blood. I just kind of just went at it and then knocked him out.
Jesus, I can't even imagine what that's like.
Worse than that, I've actually so I've broken 2 hands with a kick, and then 3 people have broken their hands off my head.
What?
The funniest one was
like
the forehead. Yeah,
taking that hard-headed to a next level.
Yeah, stubborn, very stubborn. But funny with the one of them, I was kind of killing him with kindness. He was from Brazil, and I knew like kind of the machismo he kind of had.
Sorry, the what?
Machismo. It's kind of like his
misdemeanor.
Thought it was
big shot.
So, but I knew he couldn't really take a joke, just because the way he is. So basically, I kind of killed him with kindness. There's a couple times because when we're fighting, we usually are in the same hotel. Like there's a fighter's hotel. They have us all herded like cats. So I saw him and he was kind of like lost little puppy lost puppy. And I was like, yo, you need to go this way. You need to go that way, et cetera, et cetera. And then after weigh-ins, which I gave him a birthday cake because his birthday was coming up, and he refused to take it. So
I'm gonna punch your face. And by the way, here's a cake.
Yeah. Well, the ironic thing is I won, and he didn't take the cake, right? So it said "Happy birthday, health, happiness, but sorry for the L," and then he didn't take it. So after I beat him, I ate the cake. So no, but
that guy took a major L that day.
Yeah. So. After the weigh-ins, after the medicals, I was like, hey man, like he was kind of like, again, lost in medicals. And I was like, hey man, you just gotta go there. He goes, dude, I don't want to be your friend. I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. Have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow. And then we had a mutual friend that was there, and he came, and he goes, what's wrong with your friend? And I was like, he's like, he's just nice or whatever like that. I'm like, he basically said, I don't care. I'm not going to be his friend. I'm gonna break his face. But ironically, my face broke his hand.
Come on.
So there's that. And then I've picked up people and slammed them to the point where they've broken ribs and they quit. And then the craziest one was a fight in Bellator. I'm really good at kind of putting people against the cage, and then just kind of like a mix of Muay Thai, clinch work. But because again, with fighting. When you have your back against the cage, it's very similar to being on the ground, but just different gravity, and you just kind of post them up there, and you do a little bit of dirty boxing, a little bit of elbows and whatnot. And I broke his orbital bone to the point where I hit him.
Yeah.
So what happens when your orbital bone, if you break it, your eye socket actually falls. So after I broke it, he kind of came and you could see he was touching it and something was wrong. So I hit him again, and he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. No. So he quit. So I've done a couple of those.
So that's crazy. I when I said earlier, I can't imagine what it's like. I fought in an amateur boxing match. My first one last 29 whatever, like year ago. I fought in a fight called Fight to End Cancer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I train at Kingsway Boxing with Virgil and Jen. Shout out to Kingsway. I've always been a dire fan, but dire boxing fan, and I really enjoyed it. Learned a lot through the process. Really humbles you, teaches you that fighting, even going back to your other points about brawling, in that like fighting is a lot more strategy and cerebral than it is just get in the fight and start throwing hands at people, because that's how you lose a fight pretty quick, right? But when you're saying like guys, you've broken all these bones and all that stuff, I remember the fight because I knocked the guy out that I fought. I was like the main event there, knocked him out. I've never knocked somebody out in a fight. Barely fought my whole life, and when I remember when I hit him, no one's ever been knocked out in this charity event in 10 years. My coach was like, you shouldn't have knocked him. I was like, how the hell am I mean to do it? But when I hit him with a right hook to the clean on the jaw, and I threw it and I ducked and I turned back. He's in the ground, and like my heart dropped. I was like, holy shit, is this guy okay? Like,
yeah.
So I can't even imagine when you're here like breaking orbital bones and doing all these things, like,
and then eating their cake.
Yeah, like. Anyways, I thought the first time I put this guy down, I was like, I mean, don't get me wrong. It does feel good to win a fight, like, but it's a scary thing to like do some damage to somebody in the ring.
No, for sure. Obviously, when a fight where there's money involved, especially where two consenting adults, the the positive thing for the most part for me on my end, I haven't really been injured in any way, shape, or form in the head, which is, again, knock on wood. What's it called? And even with fighting, one of the interesting things comparatively with boxing and MMA, there's many ways to win a fight. So there's been times where I don't even look like I've gotten in a fight, right? And same thing with my opponent. Whereas boxing, you can get like 100 punches to the head in a round. Especially on the upper echelon, right? So, and there's all and research has already shown in regards to the micro, like the micro concussions people can get. I don't know if that's a technical term, but there's something similar
by the volume of punches.
By the volume of punches, where it's like it's not you getting hit and you're concussed and you're like, whoa, it's just constantly being hit. And again, that doesn't even count for the training, right? Like the training that goes into it.
So I never thought about that actually. Personally, I always thought that, like when I see UFC and like, mixed martial arts and guys, you're kind of throwing more elbows and stuff, and when you're on top of them, you're throwing. I always thought that was more violent, but I never really considered the volume you're taking as well, because you are obviously can get at any point a couple hundred punches to the head. So I forgot I was going there. I got a little distracted. But that's interesting because it does seem more violent. But to your point, I remember seeing a lot of your fights coming up too. Like, there would be times where you like, whether it ends by submission or decision, like you come out of the ring, the hair's still looking good. I see you have the braids, nothing. Yeah, and you. No, but it's interesting. I never thought about that boxing, you taking more shots and stuff, because that's a very vulnerable,
only to the head, really,
right?
And then a little bit to the body to kind of open up the head again. And if you throw in not only the hundreds and potentially thousands of punches you can get in a couple of fights, and then add the years of training, and with boxing, because it has that very institutional amateur circuit, you could potentially have hundreds of amateur fights, and have had thousands of punches if not hundreds of thousands of punches to the head, before you even get paid to do it once.
It's funny you bring that up. Like, just right before you walked in, we were talking about, like, because the Jake Paul thing came up, and I was sharing with Jordan and Ricky about, like, a lot of fighters, like, Jake Paul and these guys, or even like Mayweather's 50-0, but he probably had 150 whatever amateur fights. Guys like, Errol Spence fought on the weekend. He's 30-0, but he was like 130-2. Like, that amount of fights. Like, again, I never thought about that point about how much volume of shots you're taking. Which is a pretty big deal.
And again, not only in regards to what's called your brain and whatnot, but also your pituitary gland and where all your testosterone comes from. That's why, really? Again, there's a lot of just simple. A lot of research in regards to just that's been coming out of any type of blows to the head and your effect on your testosterone, your effect on other aspects of your brain function that kind of get magnified. There you go. Thank you. No I get hit in the head too. What's it called? So over the course of one's career, and then obviously now is when we've actually starting to understand it. Where before, again, whether it's a fighter, whether it's what's it called, a hockey player who got in a lot of hockey fights, there's certain barriers in regards to communicating what those effects are for many years. And I think only now we're starting to actually have those real adult conversations.
Yeah, and the science behind it too is coming a long way compared to, even football, like stuff like that.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Concussions,
sport, and it's pretty crazy that it's taking this kind of long to kind of acknowledge it and accept it to the mainstream. But I think it's great in the progress and the strides. I mean, even to kind of jump on that, like the progress being made with stuff like CBD, and I mean, even recently I saw in the NBA, they're not, I don't know if it's medical reasons, but they're not testing, I think, now for marijuana in the NBA.
It's the bargaining rights between the union. Basically, they've only really tested, I think, in the preseason beforehand. They're very progressive in their aspects as well. But that's something that they can do collectively as a group, and hopefully, again, it puts that change in the right direction, and the many decades we're making up for lost time of cannabis and CBD research because of that stigma and because of that wrongfully labeled illegality that's been around it for so long.
Yeah, and that's just kind of like a good segue onto this, because you're obviously first sanctioned ever fighter, professional athlete
in general.
Athlete that can use, is it CBD? What is it?
THC more specific. Okay, so THC. What I have is it's called a Therapeutic Use Exemption. So originally I did it with the United States Anti-Doping Agency is when I applied for it, and that's the anti-doping agency that's under the WADA, which is the World Anti-Doping Agency, and they partnered with the UFC to be a third-party tester.
WADA's like Olympics and stuff. They did the global.
Yeah.
Yes,
but you can also hire them.
Yes.
Like companies can also hire them. So the UFC hired the American version, and then again, basically below that, different. Like again, that was the one what they worked with, but they would contract out even, for instance, in Canada, every time they tested me here, they would do it with the CCS, which is the Canadian Center for Ethics in Sports, which is again under the WADA protocol.
Right, got it.
So I applied for what's called a therapeutic use exemption because cannabis has because of its product of it being scheduled as a Schedule I drug in the U.S. And other places around the world, it doesn't have any medical properties under the eyes of the UN. They recently rolled that back, but also the U.S. more specifically. So it was an uphill battle applying for them because the anti-doping agency gets actual funds from the U.S. government, so they have to adhere to their protocols. And under their protocols, they look at cannabis as a Schedule I drug, which, like I mentioned, doesn't have any medical properties. So fast track now, with me parting ways with the UFC. As a free agent, I was able to apply to different jurisdictions without the UFC, kind of setting up a fight. And in doing so, I applied through the British Columbia Commission to get a license to be a competitor in mixed martial arts. And they test for cannabis because it's under a controlled substance in regards to their classification. So I argued under my fundamental right as a Canadian to medicate as prescribed by my doctor and afforded to me by my fundamental right to do so. And furthermore, in regards to calling into question of their standard of testing, because whether you're a 105-pound female or a 265-pound male, they have the same standard of tests, which is actually persecutes different body types. And whether it's females because of, again, their... historically speaking, what's it called, higher thresholds in regards to water and fat soluble, and that's where cannabis is actually tested. So in addition, for instance, heavyweights where they'll stay on their weight class in their body for longer. I have an example that I always bring up. A friend of mine who was 260 pounds. It basically stayed in his system for 80 days after the fact. And
this is
THC.
Wow.
And he was fined, suspended, and his win overturned, and it really sidelined his career for many months. It was almost he was actually suspended originally for a year until he took blame for it and took accountability for it. And again, it just that classification of cannabis and not even having a concise standard, because for instance, like the UFC, they test within 150 nanograms, where this one did 125. So he actually had 150. If he was fighting for the UFC, it wouldn't be an issue. But because again, this one commission, it was an issue. But I digress. Going for the commission that I competed with, it was the first case to actually get cannabis recognized as a medicine in sport. Through a government body. So that's why this is even bigger than USADA and WADA, because those are third-party testing, whereas this is actually a government. The British Columbia government recognized my medicine in sport, and it's the first kind. And the way that the commissions actually work with each other, all of North America actually respect each other's rulings. So now this has actually opened the door back to the U.S. to come full circle, and I've already applied for therapeutic use exemptions in the U.S., and I should be having answers from there moving forward into the new year, and then not only become the first cannabis athlete in Canada, but also the U.S. And then I have a backdoor, being a Greek Canadian, naturally a Trojan horse through the Olympics, Olympic way as well, moving forward in 2021. So again, my fight will be in a cage coming soon, but my other greater fight is to be the knockout punch for cannabis and its continued prohibition in sports.
That's amazing.
That's very, very cool, man, and very really cool to be the one to pioneer. I think it goes with anything, right? Being the first person to try and change a process is the hardest uphill battle, but really good with anything, right? Because not only do you have to kind of convince people, you have to be the outspoken one, you have to be the educator, you have to explain all this stuff. The burden of proof's kind of on you, and you're kind of going against these massive organizations, to your point, that have it as a Schedule I with no, which means no medical benefits, which is clearly I don't want to quote anything scientific because I'm not aware, but clearly stuff's coming out now explaining the medical benefits. So honestly, man, good on you for taking that approach and that stand.
Thanks.
And hopefully it opens the door for a lot more fighters and athletes in general.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I think, again, one of the things to kind of throw in a little bit of the science, more specifically what I applied for a therapeutic use exemption is I have a condition called bilateral neuropathy, which is essentially nerve damage of my upper extremities, which is obviously, what's it called? Something that I am conflicted with my type of work. I punch, I elbow, so all my upper extremities essentially have nerve damage where, there's cramps, there's stingers, there's different types of, pain that's associated just in general with my condition, but obviously because of the rough, the nature of my career, I constantly have to do it. And instead of having to be forced to do the original, first line medicines that, one, don't work as well as cannabis for me, and two, the side effects are equally as painful and detrimental to my ability and my ability to compete at a level playing field, and also, again, my quality of life as both an athlete and a patient, because it's not just about me being an athlete, but it's also about my life after I finish training, after I finish competing, right? And not having to be forced to take very addictive and highly detrimental, first-line medicines like painkillers and opioids for the obvious reasons that we've seen in society over the last number of years.
Yeah. Sorry, just one thing I want to comment. And that's interesting too, right? Is that people don't not people, but they might not realize, when you fight, if they say, they're worried about kind of your career window for your fighting and why it should maybe prohibit against that. But you don't realize a fight career, an athlete's career, pro athlete is a short amount of time in comparison to your entire life, right? Like you're kind of in your peak at this time. So obviously everything that happens in here could have a lot, the longer term effects could really outweigh the things in this kind of window here.
Yeah, and building on that point, have you guys ever seen the movie Concussion? The football movie with Will Smith?
I haven't seen it. I know it, but I know.
Yeah, so you know the idea behind it. And, a lot of these football players, and they're similar to UFC. It's a lot of head trauma, a lot of beating each other's bodies up. A lot of them get hooked on opioids and heavy painkillers, and a lot of them suffer from severe depression, severe mental illness because of a lot of this addiction. And they don't tell you that when you're taking it at the time. They think, this hurts. Okay, here, they prescribe you, and that's how it used to be back in the day. But now there's new forms of medicine that can help you without some of these long-term, highly addictive effects. But what I wanted to ask earlier, were you the first person to ever apply for these?
I'm the first professional to ever apply for this through a third-party testing. There's been other people. So, for instance, a football player applied in the NFL. They denied and they said no. There has been what's called retroactive. Ross Rigliotti, I don't know if you guys remember him. He was a famous snowboarder that, because again, Japan and the US have the strictest.
Canadian?
Yeah.
He's actually
got his medal taken away.
Kind.
Okay. Yeah.
I think. Yeah, in the 80s, 89.
OVO.
Yeah.
He did a whole collab with OVO.
Yeah.
So Ross, he again argued on a technicality because when he got his therapeutic use exemption, it's called a retroactive therapeutic use exemption. So essentially means that you did something wrong, but we're not gonna what's called punish you, because what ended up happening was there wasn't supposed to be actually any testing for cannabis, and because Japan is so negative towards cannabis, like you can go to jail just like the US and some places in the South where you can go to jail for like 10 years just for a little bit of weed on you, right? They're very, very anti-cannabis. For instance, and ironically, Pride, one of the original mixed martial arts organizations, they would not test for any steroids. They would only test for cannabis, and that's where, for instance, Nick Diaz got suspended there for 5 years or something like that because of that.
So wait, they didn't test for steroids, but they test for marijuana.
Yeah. Again, it's just backwards mentality, old, outdated mindset. Ross Rigliotti, he got a retroactive therapeutic use exemption. Mine's different, where we're not punishing you. We're actually recognizing this as a medicine, and you're allowed to. Because again, I told you the threshold of 150 nanograms, give or take. I probably have 1,000 nanograms at any given moment. so what's it called? I got it all in me. And again, just kind of breaking it down even more so. It's not just medical cannabis. What I was very focused on through this is actually qualifying some of the cannabinoids that are banned as well. So it's THC, THCA, and also CBDN, which are both banned. All three, the three banned cannabinoids that are in professional sports.
Can you explain what are the three different? Like, are they?
Yeah, so CBD is obviously the one that's for anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
THC is the one where it's the pain management and a little bit of the euphoria that comes with it. My argument is that to actually get the true what's called benefits of the plant, you need the entourage effect, which combines both CBD and THC. THCA, there's two different ways to ingest THCA. There is the raw cannabis, which is very interesting. So raw cannabis is just taking the raw flower before you dry it. I just literally grind up just with my kale in my smoothie every day, every other day, my raw cannabis. And what that does is it gets all the anti-inflammatory products, what's called byproducts that are in cannabis, but doesn't have any of the waste that when you heat it. Just like when you cook vegetables, you lose some of the minerals.
Yes.
Same thing with THC. So there's that. And then also when you cook it, so THCA is the raw cannabis. You add heat, it becomes THC. And then when, for instance, you're making edibles, then it cools down and coagulates just like cheese. It eventually then turns into THCA again. Okay. So that transformation is why you get so high, because you're opening up the THC, which is the psychoactive component, and then you're digesting it, which makes it last longer and has the effects going through your, I think it's your liver or whatever like that. No, it's your liver? And whatnot, because it's digested in the way that it is. We have what's called cannabinoid receptors. So our body can actually recognize cannabis and it actually can process it. So that's why, for instance, it's pretty much impossible. It literally is impossible to overdose from cannabis. Again, there's ways to inhale cannabis through, for instance, in order to do it, you basically have to ingest your body weight, if not twice your body weight in one sitting, which is impossible.
Jesus.
So you'll die of something else. Like if you smoke your body weight of cannabis, it's probably the smoke that kills you, not the actual weed, right? That's kind of the process on that capacity, because we have cannabinoid receptors where, again, it's a wholly different component when you're doing, painkillers and opioids. It's a whole different aspect.
Wow.
I was gonna say
I did not know near that much.
This was a good science class.
I'm learning a lot here.
One thing to actually again kind of drive home the fact that we have the receptors, the whole concept of a runner's high, and when you work out, that whole active runner's high, it's the same mechanism as cannabinoid receptors.
Really?
Wow. Isn't that the runner's high? Isn't it something to do with the releases endorphins or something?
Yeah. So it's all the same kind of concept.
Where'd you learn all this, if you don't mind me asking? Just years and years of studying it?
Just in general, I love knowledge, so I constantly consume information in every different direction. And obviously, my what's called my cannabis routine, and as both a patient and athlete, is very important. So I'm on it.
Did you? And how did you figure out that obviously before applying, you obviously went through all these processes to figure what was going to help with? And sorry, remind me again what you have.
It's called the Therapeutic Use Exemption.
No, sorry. You take
bilateral neuropathy.
Bilateral neuropathy. So I guess my number one.
Sorry, what is What is that?
Bilateral neuropathy. You said the nerve.
Nerve damage.
Is this a common? Is it common thing? Is it common amongst fighters? Is it?
It's common amongst people in general. It's a condition.
Okay.
It originated in different ways. For instance, obviously the wear and tear from punching. There's a component in my neck that kind of pulls down in regards to the nerve endings. Also in regards to my left wrist. Again, I mentioned earlier I was I was a former skateboarder in a past life. I used to jump off of ridiculously high, stairs before I realized I was terrified of heights. And then I broke my hand, and then 2 breaks, 4 fractures, and I didn't, because I was 16 and dumb. I didn't go to a doctor for months, and then it healed broken, so they had to break it, and then it didn't work. So
you always hear those horror stories, eh?
Yeah, then they had to get a bone graft, so they took bone out of my hip and made me a brand new wrist. And then that obviously degenerated in certain aspects. The reason why they do that is because in your wrists, there's basically the only there's essentially blood flow for every single part of your body in 2 different ways, except for your scaphoid, which is in your wrist. And if you don't get the blood flow then in there, and they don't fix it, then it basically degenerates in your hands. So it's really
Smithers
falling
Is it
apart.
like the
The
nerves
Simpsons.
atrophy almost? They like
Like,
pull
it
back?
atrophies, yeah, because there's no blood flow. Because
Right,
you need
right.
blood flow in regards to things to kind of like survive.
Yeah, I think that's Mr. Smithers in The Simpsons. You know, he's like this. Yeah, that's
I never have to do it with my hands either.
And then, so jump back to that point as well. So, when you're trying to figure out, I mean, obviously, you know, using THC, this stuff, how did you figure out that that was the best course for you? Is it just from just trial and error and and research or whatever? And you're like, you know what, I don't want to take these opioids or these prescription medication. This is the way for me. And then just kept doing your research and building the case for it.
My coach at the time, when I was getting into mixed martial arts really heavily, he was a patient for many years, and I saw the benefits for him in regards to his nerve damage, and two, I saw the detriment whenever we would travel, because like one of the beautiful things about mixed martial arts is the fighter's journey and being able to travel all over the world, which I've been thankfully able to do. And going in those different places where his medicine is illegal and he wasn't able to bring it, I saw, you know, after the 2-3 week mark, that just the detriment and the detriment to his body and his mind and everything that painkillers and opioids really did to him. And I knew that it wasn't going to be right for me. And from there, I just talked to my doctor, my family doctor, who's not necessarily a proponent of cannabis per se, but someone that believes in it, and both as a medicine, and coincidentally, he's been my family doctor for my whole life. So who better to know that cannabis is right for me than my family doctor, who's literally known me my whole life. And then obviously, I've had many different other doctors that have subsequently signed on in regards to just the the process of going through a therapeutic use exemption. It's been 4 or 5 years in the making. Where I've had people like Dr. Rod, who's a pain management.
Shout out Dr. Rod.
Shout out to Dr. Rod from the Polyclinic, who's a pain management doctor, and specializes in pain. And again, is someone that for years understood the benefits of cannabis versus traditional medicines. That again, it's not to say that opioids and painkillers and other types of non-cannabis medicine don't work, but having that opportunity to have it as an alternative for someone where it does work for me, and again, it's just backwards mentality where it wouldn't be an issue if someone could crush. It's not an issue if someone crushes a handful of perks and goes in and fights, but it's an issue if someone smoked a joint 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Wait, that's actually interesting, right? You made a point earlier about like the negative side effects of taking like an opioid too, and you know, you kind of hear that argument like drugs can be performance enhancers, but if anything too, like the opioids have also the negative side effect too, right? It's almost like a dehancer because of the negative results you can get from it.
And again, the pain component too, like again, if you're not worried about pain, if it kind of gets you in an altered state, one of the process of dealing with this, I had to exhaust first line medications. So I basically, by the end of it, was being told I had to take antidepressants to basically numb my whole body. And then coincidentally, oh, don't worry. Then positive side effect, it'll help you with your pain. So it's like, well, I'm not depressed. Why do I, like my doctor, my family doctor, he's looking at this, he's like, yeah, this is stuff that we would suggest in the 80s when we didn't have all the research, like, you know what I mean? Like, and you'd be like, and then it's like, again, when, especially in the US, when there was huge pharmaceutical companies basically pushing all these different drugs. And again, there wasn't any restrictions. So you could literally go to a doctor in one street and then go to a doctor in another one and just order the exact same thing in the exact same day.
Yeah. It's crazy. Even your point you made earlier, like if you watch old ESPN 30 for 30s and stuff, you hear about football locker rooms and baseball locker rooms back in like the 60s, 70s, 80s. There would be like a jar of just like pills, whatever. And if somebody, I hurt my hand or I sprained an ankle, they'll just go kind of take from the candy jar kind of thing. You would hear it all the time. And it's crazy to think that how we've come so far, learned so much, the advancements in medicine, all that stuff, and it's still a real uphill battle to see the effects, and that like stuff like cannabis is still considered like a Schedule I narcotic in a lot of places. Yep. And like you said, can go to jail for it.
Well, yeah, and it all comes back to economics and racism with cannabis. So if you want a little quick history lesson, why cannabis is illegal. So essentially, cannabis was originally introduced to the U.S. From doctors that went to India and noticed the herb that they were using there. There was racism. They called it, what did they call it? It's something racist. But then it kind of transferred instead after the Spanish War to people from Mexico. And then that's where the term marijuana comes from. It's essentially a derogatory, it means a poor man's tobacco. So it was basically classifying people that were smoking crappy what's called tobacco, and they couldn't afford it.
Lower class citizens
Then,
kind of thing.
if for those that don't know, there's a male plant and female plant. The female plant is where the cannabis comes from, the psychoactive. The male plant is a very, very, very good product, hemp. Right, so hemp. Actually, the first Model T was made from hemp, the car. Wow. So it's actually like, if done properly, it's just as strong as steel and a fraction of the weight. So that really ruffled some feathers with a certain gentleman named William Randall Hearst, who owned all the cotton mills, because cotton was a competitor to hemp. So he was terrified of it. Well, owning all the cotton mills means he actually owned all the newspapers. So he put some very racist things and said that cannabis was, which was primarily used by black and brown people at the time, that it was giving them superhuman strength and they're attacking white people, more specifically white women. And then from there, what's it called? Again, the racism took over, and there was hysteria in regards to, oh my God, there's these superhuman, minorities that are smoking this specific plant. We should probably make that illegal. So that's what they eventually slowly started to do. Then you fast track to the 1970s, where because Nixon, who had the Vietnam War and wasn't able to throw its biggest critics into jail just for criticizing it, which happened to be hippies and African Americans, he did what's called the war on drugs. So anyone that happened to have a little bit of cannabis on them, especially if you were protesters and hippies that were any of these Vietnam War, what's called rallies and protests, well, if you had a little bit of weed on you, now you're in real trouble. So we'll throw you in jail. And then you fast track in regards to the 1990s, in regards to the criminal reform that they did there, and the zero policy and harder, stricter drug crime bills and stuff like that. That's where, again, because the U.S. has a for-profit prison, they basically make $100,000 for every person that they throw in jail. So if you throw some guy with a little bit of weed in jail for 10 years, that's $1 million, bro.
Yeah, you know what?
That's a really interesting. I didn't know all of that. I knew some parts of that, and the part where you said like they demonized with the minorities and all that. That part I kind of knew. And then leading through it with Nixon and everything. Again, going back to the racism component, slavery was abolished in the U.S. except for one instance: jail.
Yeah,
you're
allowed to be a slave in jail in the U.S. and it's a for-profit prison. So who are they targeting more specifically?
Minorities.
Boom.
Yeah,
slavery.
That's crazy. This is crazy. And one thing, a buddy of mine, Matt Gray, he runs one of the largest like kind of cannabis related websites online. I can't remember the name of it right now. He went to Western. His name is Matt Gray. I forgot it's slipping my mind right now.
You'll look it up. Yeah,
Jordan will get it. But he was working with a foundation in the States that's trying to release all minorities that are in prison for like small charges on marijuana.
There's 47,000 people in jail for non-violent drug crimes right now.
Yeah, it was something ridiculous.
And the amount that's probably, I think, under like a certain amount. Because I remember when they legalized marijuana, like in a lot of the states in America, they were bringing up stats like about how many were in jail for the less than the amount that is now decriminalized. Mm-hmm. And it was a big topic of discussion. Like, do these people now get freed or do they not? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut your point off there, Rick.
I'm Googling Matt Gray. I need to get
There's a couple of, one of the ones I'll
Herb.
pull it up.
It's called Herb.
Pardon?
So he runs the site called Herb. You know Herb. So Matt Gray is a buddy of mine from Western, and he runs the site. And they did a massive campaign at the beginning of COVID because there was, and I can't find it right now. It's driving me nuts. But because again, like you said, there was like 47,000 people that are going to jail that were in jail. Or 40,000 people are locked up in America for cannabis. We need to let them out. So they created it's called the Last Prisoner Project.
I was just pulling it up. Boom.
There we go.
Yeah,
okay,
I know him.
So Matt Gray, again, shout out Matt Gray. He's a friend of mine from Western. And when I had no idea anything about this, right? Like I don't know too much about the marijuana space until recently with Kind, because Josh Nagel's a good buddy of mine as well. And he's the guy who started Kind. And prior to all this, I didn't know much about it. So then you start reading up on it and you find out that like there's like rapists that get released before people that have small charges of marijuana.
For sure.
And you're like, this person just ruined another person's life and possibly numerous more people's life, as opposed to one person that had weed on them.
Yeah.
Like how do you, when you look at it, now it makes sense everything you're saying, because they're basically trying to I don't want to say F up minorities, but that's kind of what it is.
Well, it's that too, and you're demonizing. And again, to the point you made earlier about it's the money aspect that runs
capitalism.
Right? It's prisons get money to keep people in them because they're private prisons, so the corporations that run the prisons, they get paid by the government to keep them there.
Yeah.
The opioid industry has more money to lobby than, let's say, the weed industry.
Yeah, and then factor in the fact that what's it called now, because of its Schedule 1 drug, it's a federal crime now in many places, and up until recently, even more places, you can't vote. So now you can't vote. Now you don't have a voice.
Yeah, that's interesting. I heard that recently as well. I didn't know that.
The election recent, yeah. If you had a criminal record, you can't vote.
I didn't know that.
Even if you did your time, you got out, and it's you did your time, you should be given a second chance at life, which we can all agree. In the States, it's not like that.
We believe in rehabilitation. They believe in punishment. That's why they still have capital punishment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, kind of on that point, then, like. Where
I'm learning so much right now. I love this.
Yeah, I'm really, it's really interesting.
I had no idea about the whole history behind the criminalization of marijuana.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's a pretty.
And then Canada and the U.S. They have a relationship. We followed along a couple of years later.
Yeah,
again, they should have seen the stupidest videos that they have in regards to like reefer madness back then. Like, it's the dumbest thing. And again, a lot of it has to do with what's it called? What do you call it? A lot of it has to do with racism, as I mentioned, and just again, certain interests that kind of band together. William Randall Hearst and the Attorney General at the time, I can't remember it. And unfortunately, again, the whole prohibition movement in the U.S. That transformed once alcohol became legal again. Well, they said we gotta fight something, so let's fight this one thing. And unfortunately, again, the people they were targeting were
minorities.
And that's what's interesting too, because again, I don't want to say anything scientific or statistically, but if you look at how much like alcohol you can go to a store and buy it, you can for how many forever. Like it was during Prohibition you couldn't, but other than that, it's never really been criminal. To my knowledge, ever in the history been a criminal. You can be punished criminally for owning it besides that era. And how many more deaths are attributed to alcohol or results, byproducts of that versus something
driving
like
exactly. You know what I mean?
And it's interesting, right? Because then to your point about the violent crimes, like it seems like things aren't weighed equally. It seems like they're weighed by whose best interests get fed the most, right?
Go ahead.
I just want to ask, like now, obviously, moving to where we are now, obviously, you made great strides with what you're doing in the battle for athletes to be able to kind of take care of themselves, their health, and be able to perform still and kind of take their career into their own hands. And obviously now with everything that's kind of slowly like decriminalizing and becoming more legal, do you think that where we are is where we should be? Do you think that the progress now is going to start to speed up? Do you think it's still going to be a slow battle?
You know what's crazy? I was thinking my question was very similar to that one.
Bro, we're on the same
I knew you said one earlier too. That was like,
we're
on the same. Yeah, we're lately on the same vibe here, but yeah.
No. Again, in Canada more specifically, they basically tightened the rules when they made it, but they're loosening them up. There's still some things that kind of don't make sense, and part of that is because it's built into the same foundation in regards to Health Canada, in regards to medicine, where again you can advertise beer in a certain way where cannabis still has that stigma, right? So there's a lot of that component. Expanding on that, there are many different people that even in Canada, have certain jail time, have certain records, which excludes them to getting into it. And unfortunately, that obviously affects people of minority communities more so because they were the ones that were mostly targeted, and also again could afford any of the charges that kind of whereas other people could possibly afford to fight the charges that kind of happen. Now expanded into the U.S. where they did a motion recently to decriminalize it, which would allow the states to kind of choose.
Yes.
But there's still 47,000 people in jail right now for a non-violent drug offense, and many of those in places where it's legal now, and there's now all this new money where these old prisoners are gonna rot for the rest of their life. For instance, on the Last Prisoner Project, they were just talking about recently, because it's a huge hurdle. The longest non-violent drug drug offense, or just offense in general. Basic guy just recently came out. It was like 35 years. He had 91 years for just a couple of pounds on him. 91 years in jail.
91 years in jail.
He was sentenced to 91 years in jail. He did 33 or something like that. He's just getting out because, again, not only because it's stupid, but it shouldn't be in jail because of COVID.
Crime,
Just a technicality. Oh, COVID. Okay, I guess we'll get you out.
Yeah, and I read something. Maybe this at the beginning of COVID.
That's my whole life.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Man.
At the beginning of COVID, I read something where it's imagine being in jail for 20 plus years for something that is now considered essential.
Yeah.
Like when you think about that.
Oh yeah, they're essential. Like they stayed open during the thing. Yes.
Dispensaries are considered essential businesses, right? So imagine people who are still in jail. Like there's still thousands even in Canada, but dispensaries are considered essential.
And they are essential in the capacity, especially in regards to access. But again, the hypocrisy in regards to how slow the justice system, even in here, is towards cannabis.
And it's interesting you say the word hypocrisy. Like it's again whose best interests are being served, right? Like Ontario, it's easy to look at it this way because the LCBO and the Ontario Cannabis Store are owned, they're government regulated stores, whereas the states it's a different level where it's privately owned things. But
I think each state's different.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Like now it's an essential, which it is. Like it should be treated as such because, again, I personally don't think you can schedule one.
This should
exactly 100%.
Exactly
but it's interesting. Like, imagine you're just sitting in a jail cell thinking like, so now a 20-year-old kid can walk to the store or 18. How old do you have to be to buy?
19.
19.
Yeah.
Can go walk to the corner dispensary, buy pre-rolled joints or buy CBD products, and I got to sit here in my jail cell because I had a couple grams in my pocket or something like that. It's crazy what a double standard is.
Yeah, and then again, it should the quote unquote black market always is not where you want things. You want it to be taxed. You want it to be the proper
safety regulations.
Safety regulations.
You want it to be,
the protocols.
Yeah, you want it to be made properly.
Yeah,
you don't want
someone's bathtub.
Yeah. We say this all the time. Like when it's made by the government or if it's made in a properly regulated environment, you know that it gets properly tested and it's getting looked at. There's there's probably pesticides in it, but it's maybe a certain amount.
No more than your tomatoes.
Exactly. If you're built, if let's say some random, the Italian mafia or some gangsters are making it in the middle of nowhere, like who knows what they're putting in, and then you're
and spraying it in regards to the
these young people are doing it, whereas. Let's say alcohol was illegal, people at a younger age would start drinking it.
Yeah.
It's legal at the age of 19, so okay.
It's harder to get.
Exactly.
It was a lot easier to get weed when I was a kid than it was, alcohol.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
That's what it's crazy thing. One question I did want to ask that was similar to George's is, do you think your case was you were able to get where you are with your case with the sporting profession because of where marijuana is in today's society, how it is being decriminalized in, I think, majority of the states and provinces, and that it's more, I don't want to say accepted, but it's a lot more accepted now than it was 10 years ago?
Oh, definitely. And it's more, it's recognized as a medicine in Canada. Yeah. But it's actually been recognized as a medicine in Canada since 2003 to some extent.
So do you think you would have been able to get this, I don't know if it's not called grant, what's an exception, I guess?
Exemption, yeah.
Exemption. Do you think you would have been able to get that in 2003? If you were, let's say you were
what's called, I think, again, with sports, there's an old saying by Isaac Newton. What's called the success of today is owed by the shoulders of the giants before you. So there's many people that have come before me, have kind of pushed those lines, and I was able to break through in regards to my specific case. And hopefully moving forward, it helps other athletes that they don't have to jump the same hurdles and trials and tribulations that I have to go to. It'll now be an actual orderly protocol to apply for it, and if you qualify, you get to use your medicine.
Well, hopefully this is the first step of many athletes moving forward where they can use your case and say, I'm in a similar situation, I should be given this exemption as well.
Yeah. And again, non-similar ones. There's many different conditions and diseases and etc. that cannabis helps with and is showing to help with that hopefully opens up the door for them.
Very cool. Just to jump back as well, I know you said you're no longer with the UFC, but do you think that the UFC will consider this in the future? Do you think they'll be a little less stringent slowly, or do you think it's still a long way for fighters to that degree?
With them, again, because it's a third-party system, they kind of they're separate.
They're at the mercy of USDA
or WADA.
WADA's overarching.
Yeah, United States
anti-doping. USADA. Sorry, USADA.
So how does that work? I guess with the Olympics and Olympics, you're still given an exemption for that because that's through
No,
BC?
this is the commission, but there's an avenue to do it that I will be what's called exercising in 2021 again to open up that door, and because Canada finds itself in a very interesting place, I plan to again fully exercise my fundamental right to medicate as prescribed by my doctor.
I like
Very
that.
cool. And you're gonna pursue. So you're gonna go and compete. You're intending to compete under. Like, what would you be going in? Is it mixed
Well,
martial?
magician never reveals his secret. I guess. Stay tuned.
Okay. Have you ever considered? Would you ever consider if you didn't with Canada? Would you do it for Greece, or is that not like?
You can do, yeah, that would be really cool. Especially depending on where, when and where it was. Obviously, if it was like in Athens, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think for the cannabis stuff, I'd have to do it with Canada.
Yeah. Greece is still a little behind the times there.
Well, they actually opened up pretty well. They have medical, and they have about 27 dispensaries nationwide.
Oh, wow.
That you can buy cannabis if you have a medical card.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they opened up recently, last couple of years.
Very cool. Very
And
cool.
then they have a whole because of their agriculture and all those opportunities. There's a lot of hemp opportunities in regards to the material and the products that can come with it. Non-psychoactive, not even smoking in or any kind of ingesting. Just more in regards to the products.
Do you use CBD oil?
Yep. There's CBD in regards to I do tinctures, so I do a 1-to-1, so at equal
what's
parts.
a tincture?
A tincture is like a drop.
Okay.
So I do tinctures in the morning.
Pardon me?
Did you know that?
Yeah, like little droplets. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do that
It's
with
like an oil, a tincture. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do that in the morning, like basically to kind of break down my routine. I'll wake up in the morning, kind of assess where I am in the day. I'll take my tincture. It's a 1-to-1. Then I could potentially do my smoothie. Again, there's no psychoactive component for it, but it's still kind of trippy when you have a what's it called? Because it tastes exactly like you're gonna like, oh my god, this edible is gonna kick in soon. But it's like, no, you can just chug it away and there's no issue. So it's still it took a while to get the brain to kind of like get over that fact. But so then from there, I'll go compete in some training or whatever like that, or lift weights or whatever the case may be. For my first session of the day, and then from there I assess my body, and then I'll tend to vaporize because again, as an athlete, I vape like a professional. So I do that, and then whether it's stretching, whether it's some type of recovery, prehab, rehab, etc., take a nap because naps save lives. Then I'll wake up, go to my next session, and after that I'll medicate again with cannabis, and then towards the end I'll do more tinctures and more CBD based, because one of the interesting things, if anyone has this is a little tip for anyone, little pro tip, if anyone has a little bit too much cannabis, and again it brings on some anxiety, just mow down some CBD, whether it's CBD gummies, CBD drops, even CBD flower. It'll help minimize the cannabis. They kind of like negative positive, so they kind of even
Offset
each other
yeah.
out. So I do high doses of CBD at night, both for the inflammation, and also cannabis doesn't make you not dream. So sometimes you don't dream as vivid and you kind of forget your dreams. And I love dreaming. I'm a very vivid dreamer. I can dream in color and all that jazz. So I tend to love to do that. So I'll just high dose some CBD and then sleep.
Dream away.
See where it goes, yeah.
What you mentioned edibles. What's your favorite brand of edibles?
What's it called? Both brands, and also I know many different patients. I get right to the source from seed to what's it called, brownie from a lot of really cool people.
Do you ever make your own?
I'm going to start actually growing my own. Again, part of as an advocate, I really want to emphasize that everyone is medically and also what's it called in Canada wise in regards to your right, you're allowed to actually grow plants yourself. So I'm gonna kind of not necessarily I don't want to call it growing weed for dummies, because this dummy's definitely gonna learn how to kind of go through the whole process,
kind of see it all the way through. That's really interesting. Do you think that after your fighting career, like this is something that kind of industry you'd want to work in or want to pursue something like
No, definitely. What's called obviously what's called with the therapeutic use exemption. There's the compounds that I'm allowed, the compounds that I'm allowed, and obviously the products that can go with it.
Okay, very nice, very nice.
I'm gonna kind of switch a little bit,
Sure.
side gear here. Amazing Race Canada. What was that like?
It was fun. What's it called? Didn't go as well. But even when I failed in it, it was the highest non-sports viewing record in Canadian television history. So even when I lose, I still
People
win.
are still watching.
The main event is always the main event, eh?
Even when I lose. But what's called, it's really cool because it was right when I was very much in the beginning stages in regards to the relationship with my girlfriend. So there's a whole component of just kind of the whole process and kind of going through it with a very new relationship, and then surviving that after the fact.
Traveling, competing, like traveling alone with a
traveling
partner.
with a new partner is one thing.
Yeah.
Competing,
putting an alpha male competing.
Yeah.
Because
we kind of did it as a goof, and then we got it, and she was just like, I really don't want to do this. But it all worked out.
You're like, I want to win this.
Exactly. But no, it's fun. A really cool experience. Again, I got to meet some people that were all on it, and create a new memory that not everyone gets to have.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's very cool.
I got some more.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So Amazing Race Canada. You also said you did some stunt stuff earlier. What kind of stunt stuff do you do?
Different TV shows, from The Listener to I think some Sherlock Holmes, everything in between. Kind of really. I'm working on a couple projects right now that I can't really talk about, but they're still kind of running, which is really cool. To kind of being able to obviously work through the way the world is right now, the new normal. So I'm thankful for that capacity. I have a couple other projects that I've done on the acting side, and then also some that are in the pipeline. Again, COVID slowed everything down in some capacity, but I'll be actually going to Greece next year to film Red Door and the Lemon Tree, which is a really cool script that I'm really excited to be a part of. I play King Minos, the gatekeeper of the underworld, and I actually have a very important part in regards to the crux of the film, and I basically allow the main character, or don't allow. I basically decide whether or not they get to do what they want to do in regards to the afterlife. So it's a really, really cool script. It's a romantic comedy with a fantasy twist. It's really, really cool. It's a great script.
And that's this summer coming up. You're gonna be
it was supposed to be this past summer, but obviously a lot of their cast is in the U.S., so they weren't allowed to Greece.
Wow.
So it'll be in Crete. I'm really excited to do that. Then I have another film where I'm the main character. I'm also a producer on it. It's called Last Hit. I play an MMA fighter, huge stretch.
I heard about it.
And then I get injured and I reinvent myself with competitive video games. So as a competitive video gamer, more specifically fighting games. I can't say the title that we've approached, and we're really close to doing it, but it's a classic.
Wow.
And then so Last Hit's a running title. But once we get the title that we want, it's going to be called a certain something that you'll know exactly what it is when you hear it.
I feel like I would guess. I won't guess now. I'll say it after. But yeah,
Say it off air.
Yeah. That's really cool. I didn't know you did this much. This much in that kind of acting space. And all
Yeah,
that.
I'm really excited.
Cool.
Again, a really nice script. A real great writer, Chris Francis. We have a really cool team on it. We have some other actors that are tentatively attached to it. And once I can announce it, I'm really excited. There hasn't been a film like it. There's a really cool component that again hasn't really been done too much, if ever. It's kind of like, you guys remember the movie Wizard? With the guy from Something Savage. Remember the little kid who was like playing the Mario game? Either way, those that are watching might know it. What's it called? So there's that.
People do that.
And then it's a mixture with Southpaw, which is Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yes. That's
and also, fun fact: I was actually supposed to play Jake Gyllenhaal's body double until he ended up doing his own stunts. So I was actually going to be the body double for.
I did not know that.
Do you know what's so crazy? I'll tell it after. But the questions at the end, that's what I was thinking.
Oh yeah.
Well, we'll get to
that.
that.
We have a couple questions. We
got
asked
some
at the
questions,
end, and
yeah.
he just I see where he's going. But that's crazy. That was a really good movie.
Huge
Southpaw.
movie.
Yeah, it was a really good one.
Actually, on that note, what's your favorite fighting movie?
Fighting movie? There's one that was really good that it's a little obscure. It's called Red Belt. It's a really cool concept. really traditional, and the reluctant hero is something that I kind of appreciate in regards to the storyline, and there's kind of parallels in regards to one of my first coaches that I kind of saw in it, and it was a really good movie. There's a couple of them, like again, Southpaw is a really good one. Warrior, it has a little bit of cheesiness in it here and there, but it's a really good one. And throw it back to Rocky when it all comes back and said and done.
What's your favorite Rocky?
The first one. First one for sure.
Yeah, that's a classic.
I haven't seen them in a while. Honestly, I haven't seen them in a while. Creed 1 was one of my favorites.
Even the new Creed ones, even the new Creed ones,
really
they're great.
Fours. I've watched the training montage video on YouTube for
sure.
Rocky
Star Swipe.
No, but Rocky 4, I've watched it at least 100 times.
Good.
The one where he's in the barn. He's in the tricep
100%.
extensions with the people.
100%. The meat.
Shoulder pressing.
Yeah. Good.
I love that.
It's great.
So we know about some of the movies you've got going on, some of the acting stuff. What's 2021 look like for you?
I'm going to have my next fight. Basically, COVID's kind of slowed down my game plan in regards to validating my therapeutic use exemption. I'm going to be both fighter and promoter with co-promotion Rise, which is out in BC. Once we get the go-ahead, which should be by January, February, is kind of the game plan. And it's going to be on a revolutionary app, which I'm really excited to partner with. It's called Imagine BC. It's based off of blockchain. So it's all about data privacy, but it's also about giving both to the content creator like myself and also the viewers. So for instance, my exclusive content will be 420 naturally, and then we're gonna kick it off with my fight. So you actually get my fight. You'll watch a whole fight. There's a docu-series that's gonna be coming out with it, kind of explaining the whole process for the therapeutic use exemption, what this means for other athletes, etc., etc. Then fast track. With the app itself, because of its classification of a 19 plus and 21 plus, it's the first of its kind in regards to sporting event that will be completely sponsored by cannabis companies and partners. So I'm really excited to spearhead that, and it'll be the first MMA event back post COVID, and part of my legal team and my team in general that has been instrumental in spearheading this and basically bringing back mixed martial arts and competition in general and sports in general. So I'm really excited for that, and just get back in the cage and win.
Dude, that's crazy. I'm sitting here listening, and I'm like, we've kind of known each other through like friends for a while. And obviously, I knew you're obviously a fighter, athlete. The main event I still think is one of the best fight names in the
trademark
history,
included
ever. Like honestly, it is insane. But
thank you.
Just listening to it, I mean, you're a pro cannabis advocate and like educate, whatever you want to call it, educator, and you're opening the pathway there. I mean, actor, entrepreneur, like. You have a lot of different layers to it. I think it's really cool that it's not just like one thing. And obviously, whatever you end up doing down the road, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of options and a lot of different
thanks so much.
Different career trajectories, right?
Thanks.
Of course,
as you were talking, you are, I think once your fighting career is over, I think you're going to go down as like a pioneer for cannabis in sport because of what you're doing. And it is tremendous, because if you think about how many careers are cut short because of cannabis, and like you get someone like Josh Gordon, who could have been arguably been one of the best wide receivers of our generation. His career just got derailed because of cannabis. And in reality, in 10 years,
it's not going to be an issue.
It's not going to be an issue. But because he was born 10 years too early, his career is just absolutely kibosh. So I kudos to you, because again, like Georgie said, you're going to be one of those people that in 10 years from now, they're going to look back at you and say, he was the one that really pushed ahead, especially for mixed martial arts and in Canada.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, man, really
again,
cool.
Together we grow.
Yeah, didn't know he had all this going on. It's very, very cool stuff.
Even though like the history lesson we got on that too, I had no idea on that either.
Honestly, man, really cool.
Do the little edit afterwards. The more you know.
He's the one that edits.
Is that from?
It's definitely a TV show or whatever.
I've seen that on like a. I'll see if I can do that. Maybe I can throw that up there.
I still want to. I'm going to try and find that YouTube video of you off the cab rolling back.
Yeah,
it was the failed Superman punch.
Oh, it was embarrassing.
The start of your career.
I cringe, but I cringe when I think about it.
I want to ask one question. I only really have one more. Kind of want to ask about, like, obviously being a Greek and going to Greece every summer. What's your favorite? Have you favorite area, favorite part, or?
I love it all because again, the whole going back to the nation states, everything's kind of different. Again, if you want to have some fun, go to Mykonos. If you want to see something pretty, you go somewhere else. Like there's so many different other areas. There's family in Kalamata. I got family in what's it called up in Florida. Like there's so many different things. You walk down Thessaloniki in regards to just the roads, in regards to the beautiful three-finger shaped what's called component of it, and just the history, and you see what's called a big statue of Alexander the Great there, and you just kind of take that all in. Like there's a lot, like the
history is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And you go to the Parthenon, like again, you can go to the what's it called, the bazaar that's out there, and like walk around in regards to all there. Like it's so beautiful.
There's so many different fasts. I mean, I say it all the time, and I know that I'm biased, but I honestly think it's one of, if not the best country to go on vacation in the middle of
for
summer.
sure. And you don't have to be Greek. You don't have to be Greek.
I really believe it. Obviously, being full Greek, my
Not
parents
biased at all.
not biased at all. But yeah, it has a lot going for it. But
when we ask George's favorite country or city, we have to say aside from Greece, Mykonos, Athens. Aside from that, what's your favorite? That's what we usually ask.
Yeah, because I didn't know everyone knows. It's the first thing I'm going to say.
Thing says. I got one last one too before we start to wrap up. What's your most memorable fight aside from the whole failed Superman punch? What's your most memorable or favorite?
Well, the Ultimate Fighter, winning that, and just the importance of it, and kind of in under 4 years of any type of martial arts, joining the first gym I did at the age of like 20, like I did, and then winning the Ultimate Fighter in less than 4 years. Just kind of the importance of that, and I actually got a tattoo to represent it. It basically means this alpha greater than 10 omegas, because I actually became 10-0 when I won the Ultimate Fighter.
Wow.
So again, it kind of incorporates the Greek component of it. Again, the alpha, the omega, and 10 regards to the number as well. So
very cool. Love
I saw that. I noticed the omega there. Yeah, alpha omega. Yeah, it's really cool.
I love that.
That's very cool, man. Yeah, honestly, congrats on the career, and I obviously hope the fighting career continues. But you seem to have a lot of options and a lot of interesting stuff going on. So whatever you pursue, man, I'm like,
appreciate it. Means the world. To you.
Yeah.
No, honestly, and hopefully we can get you back on in the future. Maybe after you get down to your acting in Greece, we can plug some stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to catch up.
Awesome.
We love that.
Awesome.
We've got 2 questions we always ask every guest. The first, and this, I like when I can ask people where this is a real question. If there's a movie about your life, who would you want to star as you? Could be anyone from any person in any given time.
Stumped him.
Shoot.
He's low-key thinking, it's like, well, I'm actually
I know the person, but I can't really talk about it right now, so I can't. Never mind. What's it called? Who would I do? Who would I choose? What's it called? There's one person I probably would say. I know the person, but I'm doing work for them right now, so I can't say that. So second, I'd run up with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah,
that's who he's looking at me.
That's when I thought, I'm like, I was talking with my brother or someone. I'm like, I wonder who he's gonna pick. I'm like, Jake Gyllenhaal or Tom Hardy. Those were my 2.
Tom Hardy's cool.
Tom, just like badass.
That's actually so crazy. You would have been Jake Gyllenhaal's body double in Southpaw. That's sick, man. That's really cool.
I can see it.
Yeah,
in a couple of months, I can tell you who I'm actually working with,
and
then you'd probably say, okay,
There's
him.
a reason to get you back on. I knew it. George, you hit him with the
last one that we have is, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
What I would give everyone, just showing up is always the first step, right? That's what it was with mixed martial arts, and that's what it is with anyone else trying to learn something new and doing something new.
That's perfect. Sound advice.
Perfect. If people want to find out more about you, everything you're doing, where should they go?
Social, find me at Elias Theodorou. What's called, you can follow me also in regards to my next fight, which will be on Imagine BC. And then that's basically it.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
We'll plug everything in the caption and the bio. But again, thank you so much for coming on. This was an absolute pleasure to have you on. I know this was a long time in the making.
Yeah.
We tried to get you on a couple of times, had some scheduling conflicts, but we're glad to have you on, and hopefully we get you on in the new year when you've got a whole bunch of other things happening.
For sure.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. That's it. Signing off, pals.
Cheers. Later.
Okay.
Boom.